would say one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I would give anyone is to ask for actionable feedback. So when you are in those environments where either you didn't get the job, you didn't get the promotion, you didn't get the leadership project, really asking for actionable feedback. So instead of accepting, oh, you did great, but there was someone better, I appreciate that feedback. Can you help me understand 2 areas where you thought I could have been better? And specifically when you say I did great, in what area, right? Would you say is my strength, right? And so really ensuring that you're getting that actionable feedback, I think is something that really helps you to then say, okay, I know where, from a performance standpoint, where I need to double down so I can work on that next level opportunity.
I'm not afraid to write a brand new story. And what changes find a way to me, I can keep it moving. I'm not afraid to celebrate my glory. And when challenges grace my path, I know I can face another day. Inside, I rise, daring to learn. With Fox After 40.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to Fox After 40, where we focus on women's wellness from head to toe. Sponsored by Chromix. And today I have my very good friend Brittany here. She works for corporations and teaches their leaders how to lead, and she helps them retain their Black talent. So today, Brittany, tell us, how do we climb the corporate ladder without losing ourselves? I'm just kidding. Tell me about yourself first.
No, I love this topic, and I'm excited to get into the conversation. Thank you for having me. So a little bit about me. I have the story that probably many Black women have in corporate, of very vivid memories of being the only one of a few or the first in a room, especially in a boardroom from a leadership perspective. And so I spent about 12 years at Pfizer. That was my last corporate trek, if you will, in sales and marketing, and had a great career there, worked with really brilliant people, kind of got the entrepreneurial bug maybe 9 years in, and started side hustling around helping women just navigate the corporate space outside of the work that I was doing. And what I quickly noticed is that from a coaching perspective, you can really only coach really anyone, man, woman, but in this instance, women so far, particularly if they are not in an environment where they can thrive. So I kind of came up against some tension in the work that I was doing outside of corporate to really think through, yes, you can provide coaching to women, to Black women who want to advance in corporate, but really it came down to ensuring that there was a culture that was cultivated, and that requires people leaders to learn how to lead inclusively, to learn how to lead everyone. And so the work that I do is really at that intersection of organizational development, inclusion and equity, and really helping managers of any diverse demographic understand what it means to create an environment where everybody believes that they belong.
What I love about what you do is that you're coaching corporations, right? Which means you get to see how they treat their 20-somethings, their 30-somethings, their 40-somethings, their 50-somethings. And then people will probably tell you the honest truth about what it's like to work there, because you're like an intermediary. So they can be honest with you, but they can't be honest with their actual job. You know what I mean? Yep. What are some of the patterns you see in promotions when it comes to women in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, and 60s, and so on?
Yeah, so my work actually started out doing generational diversity. And there's so much to be said for the differences in the experiences across generations. And so now you hear a lot of conversations and you see a lot of headlines around Gen Z in the workplace. And a lot of our expectations around work, one, have a lot to do with technology, two, have a lot to do with our background. But one of the things there's a big difference in, I would say, the 20s and 30s range versus the 40s and 50s range is 20s and 30s, you're still very much in an exploratory phase. So you're trying to figure out not only who you are, but what exactly a thriving career might mean to you, and then where you really want to hone mastery. And I think oftentimes, although there is usually a sense of increased ambition and, a lot of feedback is usually what you hear in terms of managers. And if you were to ask a people leader, what's the difference between managing someone that's in their 20s and 30s versus 40s and 50s? And a lot of that is because in that age range, you're really trying to understand, is this the best opportunity for me to really double down here and really create traction and build mastery? Or do I want to jump ship and learn a different segment of the business? Or do I want to leave and go to a different organization? Whereas I think in your 40s and 50s, you really, one, have a better understanding of who you are, which is powerful. Like that level of self-awareness to know these are what I like to call my visa, your VISA. So your values personally, your interests, which you're naturally curious about, your strengths is the S, and then A is your abilities, which you do naturally well. And I feel like you hone that with more experience, you develop mastery in an area. And then, as many women can relate to, once you hit that 40 mark, you care a lot less about how other people perceive you. So you are showing up more authentically in every space, but you're also willing to say, hey, this visa, like these values, me being able to show up and operate in my strengths and my gifts, like these are my non-negotiables. And I don't want to kind of just dabble in this space. Like I want to show up and do work where I'm cultivating this kind of impact every single day. And so you develop more mastery in those 40s and 50s, which can lead to faster promotions, but it also, I believe, leads to more fulfilling work as well, because you are working more alignment with who you are.
So you don't think there's a difference in how quickly you get promoted in your 40s and 50s versus 20s and 30s?
I think sometimes there can be a perspective that when you're younger, you sometimes can be treated more favorably in the workplace. I believe that has a lot to do with, and it's shifted a lot post-COVID, which is why I'm hesitating a bit, but it has a lot to do with like being willing to relocate and move around. So a lot of traditional Fortune 500s, and you still hear and see some of this, operate from an environment that people need to be in the office to be working. And if you think about just a woman's kind of natural progression through life, you have typically earlier in your career less what I think of as heartbeats. So maybe you don't have a partner, maybe you don't have children yet. So it's easier for you to pick up and move. It's easier for you to say, you know what, I want to get the marketing experience. This was my case. Born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, wanted to learn the marketing side of the business. We relocated to the middle of Manhattan, had never lived outside of the state of Tennessee before, and it's easier to do that, generally speaking, when you're younger. And so sometimes you see a lot of headlines and conversation around, well, is there age, discrimination? Because if you're in your 20s and 30s, you're seeing more promotions. And I think oftentimes that's a result of just being more flexible to be able to move. We see that shifting in the 2024 workforce because you have so many organizations that are hybrid now. So this kind of rigid belief that you have to be in the physical office is shifting, which I think opens up the playing field to those who are in their 40s or above to have more flexible and speedier sometimes promotions.
Yeah, some of my best hires have been over 40. And even one of my favorite, not say favorite, one of our best team members is over 50. And it's just her work ethic and background and knowledge is so vast. It's like it makes me feel like she should be running the company and not me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I know ageism exists. And
Yeah,
I know
it does.
that people get passed over for opportunities and things like that. What do you recommend to women who are dealing with ageism in the workplace and they feel like it's holding them back from being able to sit on that board seat or being able to get to that project or that promotion?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I would give anyone is to ask for actionable feedback. So when you are in those environments where either you didn't get the job, you didn't get the promotion, you didn't get the leadership project, really asking for actionable feedback. So instead of accepting, oh, you did great, but there was someone better, I appreciate that feedback. Can you help me understand 2 areas where you thought I could have been better? And specifically when you say I did great, in what area, right, would you say is my strength? Right. And so really ensuring that you're getting that actionable feedback, I think is something that really helps you to then say, okay, I know where, from a performance standpoint, where I need to double down so I can work on that next level opportunity.
I love that. That's really good feedback. Ask them to be more granular and specific in their feedback. If you've enjoyed this episode of Fox After 40 and want to get notified about the next episode when it drops, make sure to go to chromix.com and sign up for our mailing list. We'll notify you whenever a new episode comes out. What would you say is a sign that you've stagnated in corporate?
Yeah, there are many of them. One of them is the Sunday scaries, that feeling on Sunday night of like dread because Monday is coming and you're like, I don't want to show up here. I'm not excited. There's nothing about, the next day being Monday and me showing up in this space that excites me. So I would say that can be one that not only you're stagnant, but maybe there's time for a shift. The other thing that I would say too is having a sense of like not feeling like kind of what that next step is going to be. And so it's not necessarily to say that career advancement always has to be lateral in terms of you always moving up in title, but I would say always looking for an opportunity to grow, whether it is, across your organization, taking on different assignments. And sometimes when you don't have kind of that kind of natural feeling of like, I'm interested in this, like going back to that visa, I feel like, I want to have these conversations with my leader about what could be next for me. It could be a sign that you're stagnant in your career.
How often does one need to be adding skills to their resume? You're in a job, but some people say you should be getting certifications outside of work or schooling outside of work or just these different things that help you kind of level up. How often should you be doing these things?
Yeah, so from a workforce perspective, we are very much in a skills-first hiring environment where you're seeing organizations, even some colleges and universities, looking to leverage not just degrees and certifications, but actual skills. And that's only going to become increasingly more important when we look at how artificial intelligence has and is going to continue to impact the workforce. And so doubling down on things that we like to call power skills or soft skills really becomes critical. So looking at how you're honing those skills, things like certifications, LinkedIn Learning is a great tool. A lot of corporations pay for LinkedIn Learning for their employees to have access to. I would also say looking at programs outside of your organization, from conferences to coaching programs, and really taking ownership of inviting your employer to invest in your success. And so we do a lot of work helping women to really think about if your organization doesn't have a continuous pathway for your career development, there's not a career ladder, a progression curriculum, any of that, develop it for yourself. Say, hey, I live in Atlanta. This conference is coming to town. It aligns with my career development plan. I would like for this to be a part of my 2024 career development. Here's the investment in making that almost like a proposal for your organization to pay for. Those are great ways to build and develop skills. And from a resume perspective, many women in their 40s, usually if you've been enrolled for a little while, you're like, man, I need to dust off my resume. So I think it's a really great practice to do two things once a quarter. One, pull out your resume and have like a master resume where you're just adding to it, and you can cultivate and pull things off as you're applying for roles, but just kind of to have like a rolling, almost like Rolodex almost of like all your skills, all of your certifications, like any current things that you're doing. And then the second thing also quarterly that I would recommend is LinkedIn. Because a lot of organizations look at your LinkedIn profile oftentimes before they're looking at your resume, even internally within the same organization from an employer branding standpoint. So that quarterly kind of update is a good cadence so that you can ensure whatever certifications or skills that you're building are showing up in those places where people are looking.
You talked about women. You said you stayed 12 years at Pfizer, right?
I did. Mm-hmm.
What made you stay 12 years?
Yeah. Many things. The money was good. The benefits were great. It's just the honest truth. Like I remember accepting the position, and at the time I wanted to go back to law school. So my original plan was I'm going to work for 2 years. I'm going to save, and I'll be able to pay cash for law school. And I've never been in law school. So many things.
Can you share how much you were making?
Yeah.
Or give us a range. You have to say exact.
Yeah. So my range of salary there started from like all in comp from 75 all the way up to like maybe 190 when I left.
Yeah, that's a big jump. Mm-hmm. That's good. Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of things kept me there. One, I had really great people leaders there. So I can remember that a lot of what I was told about showing up in a corporate space as a Black woman, I had some of those experiences, but I also had really good leaders where I could have candid conversations with them about my experience. And because I was a great performer, I felt like I had the leverage to be honest in those conversations, especially when I worked with team members who didn't necessarily like that I was there. I was able to have those conversations with my people leader to say like, this is the experience that I'm having.
Yeah.
And here's how I'm trying to make it work. And what would you recommend that I do to make this relationship, one that's productive? So great people leaders, I would say, is one. The other thing, though, that I had there were opportunities to advance my career development. And I think that's one, oftentimes it's a big miss within organizations, especially startups, where you're thinking like, oh, I need to have the roles mapped out. But for a lot of, especially millennials and Gen Z, they're really looking for an opportunity to advance their career when it comes to skill development and ensuring that from an organizational perspective, you are investing in their talent. And so I had a lot of opportunities for that, to create projects, to do things outside of my 9-to-5 role that tapped into my skill set, to speak across the business unit, to create different regional and national projects that really kept me engaged in the work. And then I would say the other big thing that I did that kept me there was exposure to different sides of the business. So I came in on the sales side, never thought I would be in sales, didn't even know what pharmaceutical sales was before I joined the organization. And just being able to see how many opportunities there were for me to build my business acumen, learning different sides of the business, especially having a bit of an entrepreneurial bend. Like I really saw it as an opportunity to be an intrapreneur and to create the kind of career that I wanted. And so I would always ask. And, I would sometimes get, flack from my teammates for that. Like, why is Brittany always getting to, but like I would write the proposal. I would, create the opportunity. And so a lot of the coaching that I do today is really from that same paradigm of like, listen, you work at a Fortune 500 organization. And yes, you may not be having the ideal experience in this role, on this team, with these people, but look how huge this organization is. Like, how can you create the experience that you want? And so really just having a lot of those experiences is one of the main reasons why I looked up and I'm like, okay, 12 years later, I'm here.
And what made you leave at 12 years?
Yeah, so a mix of a couple things. One, organizational restructure, which is always corporate, language for layoffs. So that was happening. The org restructured. I had transitioned into a marketing role, lived in New York, came back to Nashville, and with the organizational restructure, my role was being eliminated. So I was at this place where I had started building this business on the side. My entrepreneurial journey actually started out, I was doing image consulting for women. So I was doing personal styling and personal shopping, all that kind of stuff. Loved it. That transitioned into career coaching. And then, as I mentioned, I kind of got to this place where it's like, I'm coaching these women, they're getting these great jobs, they're having good success, but some of them are still having a lot of challenges just internally. Like, and this is a culture issue. This isn't a speak up or use your voice or have a great resume. Like, this is about the leader needing development. And so I knew that there was more that I wanted to do outside of my side hustle, beyond my 9-to-5, to really tap into organizational development and how do you help C-suite leaders and HR executives really think about how they're developing a culture where diverse talent of any kind can come in, thrive, move up, be represented in leadership. And so kind of all of that, kind of just internal, like feeling like there was more that I was meant to do, organizational restructure, and a 12-month severance package. I never leave that out because I'm like, I don't have the entrepreneurial story that I hated my job. I left and I had to go figure it out. It's like, no, I took a leap with a parachute. I had a year of salary to kind of figure out, what my next move was going to be, which helped to kind of have a good landing. And so it's been 4.5 years.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So you talked about there's a group of women who have been in corporate for a long time. And once after, they turn 40, they're like, is this where I really want to be? I've invested so much time here. If I leave, I'm going to lose that investment. But I'm interested in entrepreneurship, and I don't know if I should take the leap or not. How do you tell people, how do you guide them through that decision?
Yeah, it's a very personal decision. And I think most women inside of corporate organizations, regardless of their role, want to be seen, heard, and valued. And so if you are providing that kind of environment from an organizational perspective, most women can then, even if they have entrepreneurial pursuits, think about how do you juggle building the business on the side while I'm still showing up every day. Once you don't have that, right, or you say, you know what, I think you're in one of two buckets, right? Either you're in a 9-to-5 where I think of it as you're barely surviving, you're not thriving, you hate showing up almost every day. There's a lot of emotional attacks that Black women experience sometimes in workplaces that aren't built for us. So if you have that going on, you've started to kind of build something and you can see it being bigger and more. And then the other bucket is option is you've actually started to build something, and now you've built it to the point where you can't even really advance it because the 9 to 5 is taking away from what you could be doing. And so I started to run into a little bit of that. And I think when you're at that place where it's like, I've been able to build some repeatable income, some systems, like I can see how I can grow this business and get it to scale, I think that becomes a good indication that it may be time to take that full-time leap. You know, once you've kind of built up, whether it's your customer base or a really great product, to be able to say, okay, now it's time to leap. Because I still believe, even as a full-time entrepreneur, that one of the best places to learn how to grow and scale a business is working at one. So for as long as you can use your income, your salary, your bonus, those things to pour into your business, I think it's a good idea to figure out what the business is. How do you develop that product market fit? How do you really develop the message, the team, the systems to make it grow and scalable while you're working? Doing that as long as you can, I think, helps you to become a better entrepreneur.
If you've gotten any value from listening to Fox After 40, you learned a beauty tip, you've gotten advice, you shared the episode with a friend, please do us a favor and leave us a review on Spotify and Apple. It goes a very long way in helping us continue to build the podcast. Who should stay in corporate? Because everyone talks about entrepreneurship, and it's like, I mean, that's cute, but no one's really talking about how most of these entrepreneurs are making as much money as they made in corporate, right?
Yep.
And so there's another group of folks who stay in corporate for the next 10, 20 years, and they have a bigger 401k, and they live comfortably. They get off work at 2 o'clock, and they get vacation time and time with their children. So who do you think should not be pursuing entrepreneurship?
Oh, this is a tough question, but you are so right. And I say often, there are millionaires with 9 to 5s.
Yes, absolutely.
We don't talk about that enough.
1,000%. There are millionaires with 9 to 5s.
There are millionaires with 9 to 5s, and there are millionaires with 9 to 5s who are also entrepreneurs. They just aren't on Instagram all day, or like you just don't know that they are. So I think the people that should stay in corporate or stay working at your 9 to 5 are those who don't really, who can't answer the question of how does this business make money, one. I think two, if you aren't sure how you will, at the very least, replace or double your current salary, right? If you aren't there yet, I think it's a good indication that you need to give it some more time before it's time to take the leap. And those who just have an idea, if you're still in that idea phase and you're like, you haven't really put anything out there yet, you don't have any results, I think that's a good indication that maybe it's not quite time yet to leave. Because you're exactly right. Entrepreneurship looks great on Instagram, but then there's the real story.
Are there people who you've met who've been in corporate for 40 years and they absolutely love it? And they never, because then you even answer it from a perspective of, I'm thinking about entrepreneurship, right? But some people aren't really even thinking about it. There's some people who are just like, I've been here, I've climbed it for 20 years, I want to do another 20. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, do you know anyone like that?
So I know several women like that who are not interested in entrepreneurship at all.
They're like, tell me about those women. How are they like? What do they do?
Yeah, so I know one senior sales leader that comes to mind.
Of course, she works in sales.
She works. Listen, she works
the bag.
She is getting the whole bag. She has 3 estates.
Not one, not 2, but 3.
She has 3 estates. She comes and goes. You would think she was an entrepreneur in terms of the flexibility and freedom that she has, the brand equity that she has, and like I said, there's a lot to be said for hopping on a flight with that corporate Amex, or at the end of Q1, Q2, having that, corporate bonus. Like, there is a lot of opportunity to build wealth. And I think oftentimes when we talk about, especially as Black leaders, when we talk about generational wealth, I do believe that entrepreneurship is a pathway to inclusive economic development. But I don't think we can skip over the fact that there are many Black leaders who are 6, 7-figure earners, that are thriving in corporate and aren't thinking about leaving.
I love that. So as someone who grew up on the south side of Chicago, right, I didn't talk like this back when I was a kid. I was probably talking way faster, with way more twang and all the things, right? I got to college, and I remember my professors saying, Kim, I love you so much. Your energy's great, but you're a little rough around the edges. And I was like, what? And I was like, I ain't say what I really wanted to say, right? But she was my first glimpse into, like, corporate might not be for me, because I don't have the corporate speak. I don't sound like someone in corporate. I don't say the follow-up. I'm not, well, let's circle back.
Circle back.
No, like
corporate Aaron out here.
Management, big management, corporate Aaron. Shout out to corporate Aaron if you're watching this.
Shout out.
I met with corporate Aaron. I was like, girl,
head, okay?
We're a startup over here. Don't bring corporate Aaron to the workplace, okay? But where does one go? I guess you could watch corporate Aaron if you want to learn corporate speak.
Follow up.
Question.
Circle back. All the things.
Where does someone go to learn how to fit in corporate?
Listen, it is so interesting how much of the language, the mannerisms you pick up subconsciously, like not even recognizing and noticing it. I think, a lot of it just comes from kind of you just being in that environment and you observing the way that people who are getting promoted, people who are in leadership positions, people that are thriving in those environments by way of like, okay, they're moving up, operate. And then you kind of take on some of those same, kind of unspoken mannerisms, tone, et cetera. I would say though today, and there's a lot to be said around the work of inclusion and equity today, especially a lot of the rollbacks in the space. But I would say the impact might still be catching up. But the intention in a lot of corporate workplaces is that people can bring their whole self to work. And so you do see from language to hair. Like I vividly remember, the weekends of like, especially being in sales, the weekends of, natural hair and Sunday night, pulling out, we either going with the bob wig or we pulling out the flat iron. Like so I remember just that kind of unspoken, like, what you doing with them braids? You're not wearing them on to the Monday meeting. Having
People
that kind of
to you before?
Unspoken. I think it's a combination of both. Yes, and I think it's a combination of both, believe it or not, older Black women.
I've definitely heard of stories about you can't wear your hair like this to this meeting. And it's come from, more than it's actually come from the other folks at work, right? The folks who don't look like us. A lot of times it comes from us, more mature Black women who are used to a certain expectation in corporate. Like you can't wear your hair in this afro. You can't wear your curls. You can't wear your locks. You can't wear these braids. I vividly remember my aunt telling me she went to a board meeting and she heard another Black woman say it to another Black woman. And she was just like, don't you ever come to another board meeting with your hair looking like that. And I was like, but then I've also heard stories of like, I know a woman who worked for a very big bank. She manages hundreds of millions, maybe $1 billion. She was on a Zoom call with all her corporate leaders, and one of her white managers was like, oh, Jessica, your hair looking so crazy today. And she's on a call with like 100 other managers at this bank. Crazy girl. And I promise you, she's got like the most regular wash and go going on. You know what I mean? And I couldn't believe that. I couldn't believe the things people say to you about your hair like that. Was one of the reasons I knew I wasn't gonna last, right? Because I was gonna pop off at the mouth, and y'all wasn't gonna like it. I don't care what you look like,
Or they're like coming over and like, oh, your hair's different today, and like, what? No.
And yours
yes, it is, but don't touch it, please.
Yes,
that's true though, and I think. I guess going back to the generational conversation, a lot of that, I understand it in my mind, as crazy as it sounds. It's like, well, why would we be our own worst enemy in those environments? But if you think about what older Black women, many of them, not all, endured to have those seats, to get into those spaces, it's a lot of the same mindset that, hey, because I had to do this, I had to change who I was, I had to fit into this box, I had to assimilate, I couldn't wear my hair like this, I had to fit in with the clothing, then who are you to walk in here with your yellow blazer and your curls? Like, that's not how things go here. And so I think a lot of it just has to do with the difference in cultural dynamics in terms of how an organization progresses, but sometimes we can be the biggest deterrents to our career advancement.
It sounds like hazing. Oh man, man, I hate that for us. I hate to end on a negative note like that.
Listen, but it's a new day. I feel like, women over and under 40, and I would say especially those who are kind of in that, 30s to 40s age range are really pushing the needle on what it means to be professional, because a lot of what it means to be professional is very white centric. It is, not only in terms of your hair, your look, your feel, your style, your tone. That's why corporate Erin resonates so much, because it's about centering whiteness as the gold standard of what it means to be professional in a workspace, and all of that is the antithesis of inclusion. So all these organizations that want to and are working towards being more equitable or having a more equitable work environment are really having to come to grips with what that means. And culture is always cultivated in the small one-on-one moments. It's not what's on the website or any of that. It's like, what is the experience that Kim is having at this organization? What is the experience that Brittany's having? Oh, about that side conversation before the board meeting. Like, that's the culture of your company. And so as we continue to work to change that, you have more Black women that aren't only working in corporate, but leading in corporate and thriving there.
And lastly, Brittany, I would love to know, what's your best piece of advice for someone over 40 wanting to continue to climb the corporate ladder?
I would say show up as you and be unapologetic about being seen, heard, and valued in the work that you do.
I love that. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Fox After 40. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and to leave any questions you have for Brittany. We'll make sure that she responds.
Yes.
And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.
Ooh.